We'll call the April 21 Reno County Planning Commission meeting to order. Staff, will you call the roll?
Strand.
Here.
Schaefer.
Here.
Seltzer.
Here.
Mack.
Here.
Jorns.
Yes.
Martin.
Here.
Gertson.
Here. Welcome to y'all. We want to welcome Steve back. Glad to have you back.
Glad to be back.
I trust that you've all had a chance to review your packets that you received. In those packets, we had meetings from the March 17 meeting. Hope you've had a chance to review that, and then Chair will entertain a motion.
Move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the March 17 minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. To ensure the rights of all parties of interest and to provide an opportunity for each party to address the Planning Commission in an orderly manner, the Planning Commission will follow a fact-finding procedure which is outlined in the handout on each chair. Your attention to this procedure is appreciated. If a recommendation is made tonight, that recommendation will be based upon the record of information presented to the Planning Commission. The County Commissioners will not conduct a separate public hearing or accept additional written documents. The County Commissioners will consider written requests for additional public comment or documents based only on the valid claims that the public hearing process was incomplete or based upon new information which has become available since the public hearing. For purposes of this County Commission's policy, a public hearing is considered incomplete only if the Planning Commission failed to follow its procedural guidelines which resulted in a denial of due process to a party of interest, or if the Planning Commission failed to allow an interested party an opportunity for public comment. For purposes of the County Commission policy, new information shall pertain only to germane information which did not exist at the time of the public hearing, or which was unknown or could not have been discovered with reasonable diligence. An example may be a traffic study completed after the Planning Commission recommendation. The Planning Commission recommendation to the County Commissioners will be accompanied by a summary of proceedings before the Planning Commission at its public hearing, along with the report and recommendations of the County Planner, letters, informal petitions, and other information constituting the record of proceedings provided to the Planning Commission before and during the public hearing. If the Planning Commission makes a recommendation after tonight's public hearing, this case may be presented to the County Commissioners in approximately 2 weeks. Contact planning staff or visit the website for the County Commissioners' agenda items. I will now formally open the public hearing regarding case number 2022-04. A request by David Ellis Jr. and Linda Case to vacate the 20-foot sidewalk easement located between lots 5 and 6, block 1 of Random Acres subdivision. The addresses of the properties are 509 and 601 Barnes Lake Road. Have any planning commissioners had any outside contacts regarding this case?
No.
Do any planning commission members have any conflict of interest in this case?
No.
Okay, seeing none, will the applicant please come to the podium? State your name and address for the record. You have 10 minutes to present your case, and additional time may be allotted to you at the discretion of the chairman. Planning Commission members may request clarification at the end of your presentation, or they may have questions.
My name's David Ellis. I live at 509 Barnes Lake Road. I'm here to see about getting a sidewalk easement between my property and the property at 601 Barnes Lake Road vacated. I'd contacted Mr. Vanaken earlier in the year when I was in the planning stages of putting up a shop building. And he indicated that I'd have to have an 8-foot setback from the property line. I had the property surveyed by Mr. Duncan. I can't remember his first name.
Durr is his last name. Duncan's his first name.
Okay. Anyway, and had groundwork done, and my groundwork set up to where I can have an 8-foot setback from the property line. Due to this, I came to the Public Works here to get a permit for the building, And I found out at that time that there was a sidewalk easement there. So I submitted application to have that vacated, and would appreciate your recommendations on that.
Any questions for the applicant? Okay. We'll now hear from the staff. Thanks.
No, not both of them. Mark Myatchin, County Planner. As you heard from Mr. Ellis, this is a request to vacate a 20-foot sidewalk easement. And to help orient the board here, this area right here, this is Random Acres subdivision, and this is the Hutchinson Airport and 4th Avenue. So we're just barely outside of the city limits. And that is the subdivision in question. This is a reduced copy of the subdivision plat for Random Acres, and as you can see in your packet, you have a copy of this. Right along through here is what we call a sidewalk easement. It is on the recorded plat, and so therefore it has to be enforced as far as a setback goes for the building that he is proposing. The property is zoned R3. R3 requires an 8-foot setback for that zoning district. However, in this particular case, we have a 10-foot sidewalk easement that is on Mr. Ellis's property and a 10-foot easement that is on Ms. Case's property. And so therefore, that setback off of here has to be 10 feet instead of 8 feet. For those of you that were on the board maybe a couple years ago, you may recall that we actually did this same vacation here for over in here where a gentleman wanted to actually build a shop building over here. And so we went through the process where we looked at this and we vacated this and we vacated this portion of the sidewalk easement. Unfortunately, at that time, the person that was making that petition could not get a hold of Ms. Case or Mr. Ellis, and so we could not entertain that portion of the sidewalk easement during that public hearing. This is kind of a blow-up of that subdivision, again showing the purple here is where we vacated the sidewalk easement back in 2020. And the orange is the current sidewalk easement that it remains in place because it has not gone through that vacation process. This is an aerial photo of the subdivision area. Mr. Ellis's property is right here, and that sidewalk easement kind of runs along this way, and it kind of jogs up a little bit, and then it used to go out here and just kind of terminate. A little bit closer shot of it. There's his house again. Again, that sidewalk easement would be running along through here. As you can see, it's not in place right now, and is all grown up with trees. Even on the other side where we vacated that, you can see that there was never a sidewalk constructed with this subdivision. A ground shot of the property right here. This is Mr. Ellis's house, and so you're looking to the west. Obviously, he's got a bunch of trees in here. There is no sidewalk in place whatsoever on that property, and so Mr. Ellis has requested that to be vacated. That additional 2 feet of land that he would gain would actually help him be able to put his garage where he would like to on that property. Chapter 58 of the statutes, and it's on pages 2613 to 2615, governs what you as a board need to consider in vacation request. You have to find in favor of 3 things. You have to find that proper notice was given to the public. You have to find that the public will suffer no loss or inconvenience by such vacation, and you also have to find that no private rights will be injured or endangered. My report actually does contain a summary of my findings with those 3 things. I can tell you that this was published in the Hutchinson News on March 23rd of 2022, so that does comply with the 20-day notification period. We also sent notices to Mr. Ellis and Ms. Case. We also, along with that, sent notices to the other 2 property owners that were to the west of them. If I just go back here, I can show you. So these 2 property owners also received notice from me because this sidewalk easement would actually potentially impact their living technically, and so we sent them a notice. I did not receive any kind of comments from anybody. In your packet, you do have comments from Evergy. We also sent notices to all the utilities. And then a late notice, I received an email from AT&T, and they also said that they do not have any conflicts with that. AT&T phone company. And so they do not have any issues with that sidewalk easement. And it's a sidewalk easement, it's not a utility easement, so there should not be really any utilities in a sidewalk easement. But we still do our due diligence and send them notices. We also sent notices to Ideatech, we sent notices to Cox, as well as other utilities. Did not receive any comment back from them on that, and so staff recommends approval of the request based off of the 3 requirements that are found in the staff report. So I would stand for any questions.
Evergy makes reference to a utility pole. Was that the one shown in the picture that?
No, I think what they're making reference to is probably, it's hard to see it on this one, but there's another utility easement that runs north-south. And so they're probably making reference to any kind of issue if he's wanting to move that pole. It could also be the one that's out on the road right with, but more likely it's
You
probably the
had one in a photo there.
Yeah, that was the one that was out in the road right of way, and so I think they make reference to the one that's on the back part of the property. There's like a shed that's also back there, a small utility shed, so they're making reference to
Under
that.
present circumstances, if that needed to be moved, it's their responsibility, or whose responsibility is it now?
It's the property owner's responsibility, so,
And it will continue to be,
yes,
so there's nothing changed about that.
nothing changed, no, it's the property owner's responsibility. If they have something located in that easement and the utility company needs to do work in there, then it's the property owner's responsibility to remove that shed.
Now, Mark, since this is a sidewalk easement, it really doesn't change any utility access rights.
Correct, it doesn't.
So-
Yeah, like I said, utilities should not be located in that sidewalk
Anyway,
easement.
yeah.
But again, this was platted in the late 50s here, and so we just want to make sure, and so we did not receive any comments, so there are no utilities that should be located in there, and they should not be locating in a sidewalk easement. But yeah, it should not affect their rights. There's a utility easement that runs north-south through the subdivision, so that's where they should be getting their access from.
So, Mark, if our recommendation is to vacate that sidewalk easement between lots 5 and 6, at the same time, we would be vacating that sidewalk easement between 14 and 13 at the same time?
No, that was already done. That was done in
Oh.
2020, if you recall.
I thought it was on over, okay.
Purple means that it's already been
Okay.
vacated. So we already had a public hearing in 2020, and the county commissioners concurred that we should go ahead and vacate that sidewalk easement. So that was already done and complete.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we did not get in contact with Mr. Ellis or Ms. Kay, so we could not consider this part of the sidewalk easement at that time in 2020. And so this is just hopefully cleaning up the rest of this sidewalk easement that was put in place for some unknown reason.
At the time we considered those other 2 vacations, I made note to ask Mr. Britton for confirmation that the county has no need for that, or easement, for no need or anticipation of any sort ever again to run any kind of utilities or utilities, sewer lines, water lines. No need. Anything there? Okay, Mr. Britton's on record as having no interest there in maintaining that.
That was just strictly a sidewalk easement, which means that that's the only thing that could go in there, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah, so there'd be no utilities that could go in there.
Right.
Based on that easement.
And like I said in the report, to me, it was poorly planned. I mean, this does not lead to a playground, it doesn't lead to a pond, it doesn't lead to other sidewalks that would connect with that. For some reason, the developer at that time thought it would be nice to have sidewalks, going through there. My suspicion is, if you're walking down one of the roads and you lived over on Augustine, you could cut over instead of walking all the way out onto 4th Avenue or turning around and walking. But to me, it was poorly planned with no other amenities serving that, and so to me, it needs to be vacated.
Any other questions for staff? we'll let the record show that there isn't anyone here in the audience to make any comment.
Okay.
Do you have any more to add does the applicant have any more to add?
Not that I can think of.
All righty, sounds good. Staff, anything else? You got everything covered?
I think so. I don't have any further comment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Does the commission have any further questions for the applicant or staff?
No.
Okay, the public hearing is now closed. Acceptance or denial of the vacation request must be based on finding that proper notice was provided to public. Public will suffer no loss or inconvenience by such vacation, and no private rights will be injured or endangered. This is the time the planning commission can discuss the case and ask for procedural questions of staff only. Are there any, is there any other discussion from the commission? If not, the chairman will entertain a motion.
I move that case number 2022-04, the request by David Ellis Jr. and Linda Case, requesting the 20-foot sidewalk easement located between lots 5 and 6, Block 1 of Random Acres subdivision, be vacated as described in this petition, finding that proper notice has been given. The public will suffer no loss or inconvenience by the vacation. No private rights will be injured or endangered.
I second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, staff call the roll.
Strand,
Yes.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Selson,
Yes.
Macklin,
Yes.
Jorns,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Gertson.
Yes. Motion carries. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
sir.
Are you through with me?
We're
Build your
through with
shed,
you.
yeah.
Okay. Have a good day.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thanks for improving your property.
Yep, for sure.
Well, you all probably want the tax money anyway.
Next item of business, in your packets, we discussed last month some strategic development ideas. You're charged with force ranking the top 3 in your mind and coming to this meeting prepared with those top 3. So I'll just open up discussion. I'll go last. Kind of keep a tally here on what we have going, and we'll go from there. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a categorical type question. I think at the end of the meeting last time, I had suggested that we pick an easy one to do so that we cut our teeth. I have since changed my mind. I don't think there's, in this county, there is some pressing issues, and therefore I withdraw my request. We pick an easy one because I think there are some important things that need to be done ASAP.
Point well taken. I was riding on your comments very, very heavily from last month, because I had intended a force ranking, and then we were going to pick the one we were going to start on.
Right.
So we'll just keep that in the back of our mind, and as we go through this.
That takes away all the discussion I was gonna have, because I was gonna say, well, there seemed to be a little bit of conflict about what everybody wanted to do and how to rank it. But I think, in reading the minutes, and I wasn't here, but I did watch the meeting on YouTube. And I think, to me, I think I kind of agree with Don's position on this, that we probably need to tackle what we consider the more pressing items first. They're not by any means the easiest, and they're going to take a certain amount of time to work them in. To me, that's your commercial solar development. I feel that, we currently have 0 regulations in this area. And if you get a full-blown commercial solar development coming in, they can take over 1 or more sections of ground and just blanket it with solar panels. And right now, all we can do is say, gee, that's nice. Other than going through the, conditional use permit process and trying to deal with it that way. But I feel that we should have some type of regulations for both us and for, any company that wants to put in a solar project, so they know what be expected of them and whatnot. I think that's probably the most pressing one. The second one would be your hazardous waste disposal plans. And then your building codes for, requirements for manufactured home modular foundations. Water use and disposal systems, I really don't think that's an issue. The county health department pretty well handles that through the sanitation code that they had developed and they enforce. Drone issues, FAA, I think that's pretty much their bailiwick on there. And the other ones, private gun ranges and hunting preserves, to me, that's pretty difficult to try to even think about trying to come up with regulations for those because, there's so much, each private hunting preserve may have thousands of acres and it's all farmland. Private gun ranges, there aren't too many, but if you're talking about backyard gun ranges, then that's another issue. I've got one in my backyard, geez,
Yeah.
but, I try to make sure that it's constructed safely so that, I know where the bullets are going. Fire management, that's another issue after these other ones. I'm gonna have to rely on Mark's input on that, as to whether there's anything that we can do within the zoning regulations to try to mitigate the risk of fire. As I understand it, a lot of it is just the overgrowth of the cedar trees on properties is a big contributing factor, and that's private property. You can't tell them, unless we pass an ordinance, say you can't have cedar trees, you gotta get rid of them, and who's gonna get to pay for it,
I might add that, we're still waiting on direction from the county commission, so I don't see that topic right now as being a need to really have a full in-depth discussion, because we don't know what we're gonna be asked to do, if anything, right now with that. There's still a lot of discussion going on right now, and so I think I would, as a board, hold off on that, and we would go a different direction. Now, it may become a topic in the future then we have to address, but I would say right now, I would just not even consider that right now.
The one topic when that comes up is they are questioning whether 3 acres is is large enough to allow a home built on. That is one question I have.
That would be something you can look at, but you could have 4 acres and have it solid cedar trees with a house in the middle of it, and doesn't solve anything. The main thing is you can have a bigger lot, but you have to have adequate, ingress and egress for fire, emergency equipment to get in and out. The other item on the list was creating public lands, recreation, and or green space. I don't know what we can do there. Generally you run into that where you have somebody coming in and putting in a housing development or subdivision. And, in some areas they will say, well, you've got to set so much land aside for public space, green space, whatever you want to call it. In our case, most of the land out here is privately owned. So you can't dictate that they can go in and do this unless they're trying to do some type of a development,
Right.
on the property, and then we could attach conditions to that. So the way I see that's really comes into being regulated, and it'd be nice if we had a lot of, housing developments and things coming in, then would be a concern, but, let's be realistic. That's my 2 cents.
All right, I'm going to summarize real quick.
That's right, okay.
Maybe not in this order, but I'm going to summarize your top 3 as being the commercial solar development,
Yes.
building codes, and hazardous waste
Yes.
disposal plans.
Exactly.
That correct?
Yep.
Okay. Is there any of the commission members that would like to add to that list or have their own selection to share?
Well, since I've already spoken and kind of changed my position from the last time, I was going to come to this meeting saying that the incorporating fire management into practices in zoning as number one, recognizing that we're still waiting on some direction from the commissioners on that. My second one would be commercial solar, and my third one would be building codes.
Are we proposing to work on one at a time, or are we going to multitask and?
No, we're gonna take one bite at a time, and when we're done chewing that bite, we're gonna grab the next one.
Mark could handle 3 or 4 at a time. Sure.
Along with all the other duties he has.
Mark, your comments make it sound like we're expected to be kind of reactive to what the commissioners say. I guess I'd take a little bit of a different tack to that. I'm wondering if we're foregoing an opportunity to be proactive and kind of suggest to the commissioners that kind of maybe we see some need here that is still being under consideration, and kind of tweak their position a little bit. And
Yeah, I think we're just waiting for
if we wait very much longer, there will be a lot of people who are already in the process of rebuilding and redesigning and
Right.
redoing, and we may be a little late to the party.
Like Don said, I think, they might want to look at acreage requirements, but I think, that's something that this board will have to weigh and see, is that really gonna help anything? So I think we just need to put a pause on that for a little bit until we get more of a feel of what they maybe want us to do, if anything. That doesn't mean that we can't go in and tweak something later, but I think we want to let this committee that's meeting right now, that's continuing to meet, bring forth some additional recommendations and let the commissioners weigh all that, and then from there give us some direction, or give us, some questions that they may want to have answered.
We can't make any legal changes, but we could kind of raise the topic publicly and advise people to give it some consideration as they are preparing to rebuild and as they are preparing to reorganize their homes or their businesses or their buildings. May be more cognizant of things that they might possibly be able to do to just kind of put the bug on them and remind them a little bit that there are things they can do to be more fire conscious.
Knowing a couple of them that were affected directly, they're making plans for the next time. So I don't know that we need to be.
Or we could list some resources that are available to them through the.
They've got their plan in place, and I think we can let that plan roll through with what the
And the
county.
longer we wait, the more of them that will have that done.
So Mark, do you have any idea on a time frame if we do go in this holding pattern here, as far as moving forward on any kind of zoning changes related to the fires?
Not really. I don't have a good timeline, I would, I don't want to speculate, I don't know at this point in time what we'd be looking at as far as timing on a direction, if anything, right now. There's a lot that would go into any type of changes that we'd have to look at.
There's a question in that regard, Mark. I mean, okay, say you're looking at a larger lot size, for instance. I mean, okay, that really doesn't solve anything in and of itself.
Yeah.
But do we have the ability to require certain setbacks from certain types of vegetation and stuff like that? I mean,
You're
a lot of that, I mean, there's where you're looking at trying to solve the problem.
You're getting into telling me which tree I can have,
Exactly.
and which tree I can cut
Exactly.
down, and I'm
Yeah,
not.
that's what I'm saying is, I don't know what.
Yeah, that's what I mean, I don't know what there's to do,
I think we need to let the county, the county commissioners have a task force or a committee that's looking into what they can do to mitigate the problem. The timing, I'll recognize, Ken, that timing, it could be pushed to where we're in another fire season before we have a lot of mitigation plans in place.
If they had a 3 acre lot before, they're still gonna have a 3 acre
That
lot.
doesn't
There's
make
only-
it- there-
There's only so much you can do, but.
So I think we need to let that kind of all flesh out, and then we'll get our marching orders if there is any.
Well, out in that area, they're probably half-acre lots.
Yeah, there's a lot of variance through there.
I would think we should be focusing on platted developments and the design of those.
See, we have those subdivision regulations. It's just that those were sold off and slivered off by private individuals prior to any of those subdivision regulations, a lot of that.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking moving forward, I don't know that we're
Yeah,
in Reno County looking at a rash of new housing developments, but if there were to be one, I think it would be a case of being able to consider fire management, maybe even incorporating green space into a plat to serve as a firewall, so we don't have a repeat of what just happened with, house after house. So I think there would be things that could be done proactively for new developments that I'm not so sure
Yeah.
existing that we have.
the existing landowner plats are already there, so we're not
Right.
gonna be able to do much with that.
Yeah, the thing is with the green space type thing, you gotta look at the type of development that you're looking at, because somebody has to maintain that green space for it to be effective as a fire barrier and whatnot, which means somebody's gotta pay to maintain it. And that through a special assessment or a HOA, or how's that gonna be handled?
I think that can all be fleshed out at
Yeah.
a later date. Thank you, Harley, for your input.
Well, I'm sitting here thinking that your comment, just one bite at a time, and if we take a bite and it doesn't wind up being that, and then we get our marching orders, we're trying to do 2 bites at the same time.
Well,
So that's why I put my number one issue there just for discussion purposes, so that we're ready to act if we get our marching orders.
I think we can hit the pause button, because I think that would probably, if there becomes a hot skillet, so to speak, we got to pull off the stove, I think we can pause and take the hot skillet off the stove.
And I accept that as a proper approach.
Okay, thanks, Harley. Anyone else have some input?
Well, I put the fire management as my number one and commercial solar as number 2, but I would have no problem with bumping the commercial solar up to number 1.
Okay.
I had solar as number 1, and I just saw an article about Johnson County that this is an issue there. Two perspectives are developing pretty quickly. The county came up with some more restrictive regulations than a group that was wanting to promote solar development. So they've got, it sounds like a similar situation brewing that happened in Reno County with wind development and, pro and con. So it seems like this could easily happen. And we know that we have at least 3 already in Reno County. I don't know how deep this would go into private installations. If I want to put, a half acre or an acre or whatever on my property, I don't know what I'm going to run into.
Currently, we don't regulate it, whether it's a roof mount. Certainly, if it's a roof mount, we don't regulate it. If it's a ground mount type of system for a private owner, we don't regulate that either, unless it's in a floodplain. Then we need a floodplain permit for a ground mount. But other than that, we had solar regulations and the other set of zoning regulations that we had. We took them out because there really wasn't much for us to review. at that point, so those were removed. I mean, it's a roof mount, we don't have building codes in the county, so there's nothing for us to review as far as, can a roof handle and that kind of weight. It's not our job to review that. As far as ground mounts, you're talking, something that's 2 or 3 panels, maybe 4 panels at the most. I don't know if somebody had ever put in, like you said, like an acre or whatever of it, for their own personal use or anything like that. So there really wasn't a land use there that we felt we needed to regulate, and so.
So we don't have setback requirements?
No.
Nothing?
No.
The smaller community-sized solar we have, I farm next door to the one going out in Huntsville in the unzoned part of the county, and it's a surprising, I don't know that I expected it to be as dramatic of a visual land use change as it is. And I could see where if you've chosen to live out in a rural part of Reno County, independent of my personal opinion of solar, like if you have a 2-section development, it's a very dramatic visual land use change. And I've just kind of been watching it top dressing my wheat here the past few weeks going in. So it was tied for number 1 with me, along with fire. So depended on guidance from the county commission. Now for my number 3, I was taking Harley's earlier thoughts to heart and kind of picked up more of a smaller bite to chew on. And for that one, I chose the home occupation, but that was number 3 for me.
I had home occupation as number 3 as well. The trend in that area is pretty strong, and I have a new neighbor down the road, and he is working from home, which is simply due to Ideatech laying fiber down the road. But I'm certain that we're going to be seeing more and more people working from home, and how much business they do from home, I don't know. In his case, he's IT consultant, so it's not like he has customers coming and going, but I do see home businesses continuing to grow.
Okay, anyone else? Am I the last one?
Guess so.
I'm the last one. I force rank mine, commercial solar is 1, home occupation is number 2, and then for number 3, for number 3, I had building codes. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but the fire management practices did right on my mind, but knowing that the county has a committee that's working on it, I'm going to trust that they do their due diligence, and I know I'm going to do mine on my property. So that's how I'm approaching that.
I have a question on building codes, because I was tempted to move that one up on my list, but the note kind of zeroes in on the manufactured modular construction, and I didn't know if that was sort of the guardrails on that building code, or if building code door is opening wide for consideration other than or in addition to manufactured home and modular foundations.
Mark, you might be able to help us out with what we have some zoning guidelines for manufactured homes.
Right.
But it's how they're placed is what we're concerned about. Not, I mean, okay, where they're placed, setbacks and everything is assumed. When I say how they're placed is what kind of foundation they are, so they don't tip over in a 20-mile-an-hour wind, or they get moved easy, they're made to be moved. But when they're at their new temporary permanent home, we want them to be fastened to the ground somehow.
Yeah, I understand that. I just wasn't sure if this was intended to go beyond that. I mean, like Mark's example a while ago, how many solar panels can someone put on their roof? Well, I guess the county does not offer any advice or have any regs on that, or any code. And I didn't know if this was going to be octopus of a topic that would, we would find ourselves deep into building codes, or how far it was intended to go?
Boy, I don't know that we want to get into the building code business.
Well, that was my concern, when I saw that initially, because that's a whole nother topic here that involves experts that are hired to enforce those codes. And so I think probably the intent of the people that suggest that was, let's have some more specific regulations for some specific land uses, and you bring up manufactured homes. Let's make sure that the home is sitting, on type of foundation that is, anchored to the ground, or it's skirted or something. It didn't intend to implement building codes and enforcement like what you have in some cities. And so I think that was probably what the intent of the people that suggested that was, because building codes in the county is not something that, is on the table as far as I know, and it would take different staff to be able to enforce that, and they're not going to go there at this time, I'm sure of that. So, but we can definitely, look at improving the specific regulations for certain land uses. It wouldn't be called a building code, it'd just be an enhancement of like the permit that's issued for, say, a manufactured home.
Does that make sense? Satisfy your curiosity?
So if that's the case, I would not move it up my list.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, I've just been taking not copious notes by any means, but I believe we've force ranked 3 based upon just our, maybe not so much 100% consensus, but through our discussion here, that the 3 that we're going to be focusing on would be the solar development, home occupation, and the building codes. Those are the 3 that I tallied that had the most interest amongst us.
Repeat those, please. Solar.
Solar, home occupations,
and building
codes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, I'm going to lean on the experience of the staff and I'm going to kind of depart from Harley's wishes just a little bit, and I'm going to say, okay, which one would be the easy? I'm going to ask 2 questions. Which one would be the easiest or the quick hit? And which one do you see as the, would you anticipate, you don't really have a crystal ball, which one would you anticipate being the most critical? That's going to be a hard question.
Go ahead.
I said staff, so you just jump right in there, Don.
Staff.
You're staff, you're the boss.
It's my opinion, just like what the gentleman said, I think solars is something that you should tackle. I think that could happen at any time. I think that's going to take the longest and be the toughest, but this is the one that you need to start with, get done, and then go to the next one.
Okay.
That's just my opinion. You need to be ahead of solar and not let it happen what happened to wind for this county.
I agree 100%, yeah.
Yeah, I think, believe it or not, I think solar would probably be easier to do than home occupations, in the sense that I have other counties' regulations on solar, so I think we have probably a pretty good boilerplate to start with that. We may want to differ a lot from that model. We may want to, almost adopt it verbatim. Home occupations need to be done, and I think there's a lot of issues, and I think there's a lot of specifics that need to be put into those regulations. What is a home occupation? What is not? We're not talking about the person that, works for a company or a corporation and is doing all their work at home in their computer and in their office. We don't care about that. That's not really, it is a home occupation, but it's not something that we're interested in regulating. What we're talking about are certain home occupations where public comes to there, where you're a hairdresser, whether you build furniture, cabinet maker, that type of stup. Daycare centers.
Customers to come to your location.
Yeah, daycare centers would be the biggest one. So, like I said, I'm not interested in the guy that's an accountant and works for a company and sits on the computer all day and nobody comes to the office, his house. I'm more interested in the people that are coming from the public out there. What's that do to traffic, that type of stuff, noise levels, and so on and so forth here. And so I think home occupations are important. I think they're a close second, but I think it would take some time for staff to kind of think through and make sure what is a home occupation, what is not a home occupation. You're not going to be able to do auto repair at your house as a home occupation. We're not going to allow that. That's just one example. So there's things like that that this board and staff would need to think of to be able to define what is and what is not a home occupation, what is allowed, what is not allowed. So I guess my opinion is, I think we have probably a pretty good start on solar, and I think, like, Don said, I think, that's something that we may want to get out ahead of. I don't think it's going to be obviously as complicated as what wind would be, but I think it's something that we should probably start looking at.
As we're reviewing the commercial side of that, I'm listening to what Garth has to say about private, more so private ground mount. We don't really have any regulations on setbacks and those types of things. Do we want to, my mind is just thinking here, do we want to have something similar to what we have for accessory buildings? We have a certain amount of square feet that we really don't care about where they put it and how they put it, other than, the right of way and those types of things. But if they get over a certain size, do we want to start putting our thumb in there?
A certain size or a certain number of them on our property?
And I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
I'm just, that might be maybe something that might be a subsection to what
Yeah.
that piece is.
I would say,
Look at as we're going through the process.
instead of saying definitely yes or definitely no, I think that's something that this board, as part of your discussions, if you choose to go that route, would start looking at, do you want a permit for that? And have a setback. I don't know if there's ever been concerns from neighbors about somebody's solar panels in their yard or not, but that's certainly something that this board can look at and determine if we want to do something there or not.
And maybe through the conditional use process, that'd be the place to look at it.
Maybe.
I would suggest that we parallel private and commercial as we go through this process, and if we come across things in the commercial development that may apply to a small private installation, then we might want to take a time out and think about that.
Make a note. Yep.
I'd probably prefer not to go through the conditional use permit process for a private. I think that's going to be similar to the sheds. I think we're going to be inundated.
Yes.
And I think it's,
I just used that as an
Yeah,
example, but I didn't know.
Right.
There's a lot of ball juggling that we'd have to.
it's certainly your guys' choice over on that, but I think, off the top of my head, I'd be open to arguments, of course, but I think we want to stay away from doing a conditional use permit for that. It'd be similar to doing a special exception for some guy's 30 by 30 shed. You're just green lighting these and we're just having a hearing. I would rather probably right now have a set of guidelines or regulations, if you will, that a person would have to meet in order to do a ground mount out there and leave it at the administrative level versus bringing it to this board. Certainly open for discussion.
I mean, I could see maybe a square foot limit of some kind, only, as I understand it now, there's not net metering, so you can't sell power back.
Yeah.
If that would happen, I could see somebody putting up a bunch of panels.
Hurry.
More than what they need for their own,
Then it would, as soon as they start selling.
for their own
Then it's
house.
commercial.
Well, that's, yeah.
Right, could be,
Sounds
But it'd be
like, Mr. Chairman, we all agree, or where do we start?
I think,
And whatever is second our opinion may change on that as we go.
we definitely found number one.
Yeah.
So I think we turn staff loose on commercial solar. And we'll, I think like we discussed, we'll work on that one. And if we get a hot skillet coming from us on fire mitigation or anything like that, then we'll take a pause and we'll work on that in the meantime. How's that sound? Yeah. As a board?
Yeah. Sounds good.
Probably what we would do is we'd look at creating another chapter, create a separate chapter maybe. Because I think it'll be detailed enough to
Yeah.
probably one separate chapter.
Oh, yeah, it'll be just like what we did for the wax.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
I think so. That, to me, in my mind, that gave, if you're looking at the WEX regs, that gives both sides the guidelines or the guardrails, and I think we need the same for the solar. That's my opinion. I may not be speaking for everyone, but that's how I would like to see it.
After we get this done, the home occupation may be very important because the county and the city's getting ready to invest millions of dollars in childcare. And so there may be a lot of that popping up.
Yep.
So we'll need to have everything in order.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So we'll look at that.
Okay. Is there any other business that needs to be brought before this board?
So I have a couple items, Mr. Chair, that if anybody else does.
Anything else? Okay, staff, you have the floor.
Okay, so based off of what you guys had determined as commercial solar, for May, I don't have any public hearings scheduled. No public hearings, so we can not meet in May, or we can start meeting in May and start looking at the solar regs. I do have some boilerplate solar regulations to give you a good start at looking at something. We can have a study session at May and do that for an hour or whatever and get your guys' initial thoughts. Or we could cancel the meeting.
No opinion.
No
Well,
opinion?
I guess I would say you can consult with the chair, and if you have something that you think is important to present regarding solar.
I mean, I have a boilerplate right now of the regulations for Marion County that were adopted, and so we can start there. And you can start redlining that if you want.
I'd say share that in our packets and we'll start redlining it and we'll meet in May.
Okay?
Any thoughts? Good with that, Steve?
I can send it to you electronically, or I can.
Okay,
I got a grandson graduating.
fair enough.
And I'm gonna go down.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if we
I
had.
think there's no time like the present. We'll get started.
Yeah, if we don't have any
Well said.
cases,
No time like the
let's
present.
get rolling.
We'll regret it if we said, oh, we should have done that in May.
If we sit on it,
Sit back on our heels and say we wished we would have been on our toes.
I think it's,
it's not going away.
Yep, for sure.
I got one other item then.
Any other,
One other item.
okay?
So I would suggest to the board that you begin reviewing subdivision regulations. The potential exists that we could have a preliminary plat coming before us here in the coming months. I'm not really at liberty right now to say where, or anything like that, but we haven't done a plat in the county in probably 12 years at least. And so I would maybe start familiarizing yourself a little bit with that set of regulations. Now, in May, if you want, if we're gonna meet, the other thought was we could also do a training session of some kind, or a discussion item on subdivision regulations if you want,
I like that.
with that.
I approve.
Yep, I agree. I agree.
It'll be, I will say it'll be a learning experience for everyone because, we haven't done a subdivision with these regulations. and we haven't done one in 12 years.
Ken's probably the only dog on this commission.
No,
We're not at that time either.
No, I was back in the 90s.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was 2008 or 9, I think is when we did it. maybe.
That would be a great idea. I'd say put that as agenda item
So we'll do a study session,
on subdivision rate.
and then we'll get a first look at,
Yeah, very high.
we'll look at some,
Super high-level overview from you on what you see that will work for Reno County and what is on the page and what you think will work and what you believe we need to look at to change. A high-level overview, and then we can go in and take a look at your
we'll have a
suggestions.
discussion and see, on that, we'll have some.
Subdivision regulations, are you looking at Articles 3, 4, 5, and 6, or what?
Not Article 3. Article 3 is lot splits.
Okay.
You'd be looking at 4 and 5, I think. You're gonna be concerned about preliminary plat process, final plat process. Even, is it Article 2, which talks about what constitutes or what should be in a preliminary plat? The items?
Agricultural district regulations. Article 2 is.
In the subdivision regulations?
Oh, I don't know.
Subdivision regulations.
Oh,
Yeah. So I think Article 2 talks about contents of a preliminary and final plat. And then Article 4 and 5 kind of talks about procedures and gives you guidelines on road design, lot design, that type of stuff.
Mark, given what you said earlier about this possibility, is it too late to get changes made if we look at these plat?
Probably would be in this case.
Think, oh my gosh, what were they thinking back in 1990 or whatever, the last time they were written?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, we won't have sidewalk easements, in there. And,
for green space provisions.
But there's things like, green space, like you talked about, there's gonna be a drainage plan that's gonna be developed, in there, because with a subdivision, you can't just drain all the water from that development into the county or township ditch, nor can you drain it onto other people's property. So it'll have to be contained, and that'll be put into a reserve area or wherever, like that. But as far as like implementation of other ideas that aren't in our regulations, you'd be pretty limited in trying to do something like that. Like you said, green space, I brought up topics before like building envelopes where only structures can be located in this certain area. And those are probably gonna be beyond our current regulations and not enforceable.
Is there an influence of state laws that may have changed into those type of developments?
No.
And what zoning regulations are allowed and what counties are allowed to do? Has anything happened at the state level?
No. But still, it's whatever our regulations are at that time that it's developed, so.
Sounds like we have a worthwhile meeting coming up
I
in
think we
May,
do. I think we do.
both in the form of learning and moving ahead.
I'll see what I have. I don't know what we'll do with subdivision, but it may just be do a review of that and we can just come and have a general discussion on that. I can try and put together like a sample preliminary plat or final plat and let you guys look at that so you can kind of see what that's like. And kind of let you familiarize yourself with what a subdivision plat actually is and everything, because we don't have a lot of them. We don't have a lot of them in the county, but we can talk about some of our procedures and how that will go.
Sounds good. Any other business?
That's all I have.
Any other business before this board?
Move to adjourn.
Been moved, do I hear a second? Been moved and seconded, all in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.